We looked at how the market has changed really since the 1970s in terms of the number of vendors who have come into the space. And we, at the moment, have about 86 different people analytics vendors on our radar. And we saw a growth of about 146% in just the last 10 years. So there's been a pretty substantial growth in terms of numbers of vendors. We also asked we asked the vendors in our study about how quickly they were growing. And we asked them both about their customers as well as their revenue growth rates. So their customer growth rates across from 2017 to 2018 it was about 80%, which is remarkable. But what was even more remarkable was actually the growth in the revenue numbers, which was about 420%. So we're seeing growth in the number of customers, but even much more substantial growth in the amount of revenue. Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of organizations building people analytics teams, and a big part of this is that there was a period of, I would say, experimentation where organizations were trying to figure out what the value was of these teams and how they could have a positive impact on business outcomes. And in many organizations, that experimentation has resulted in a decision to go ahead with it. So we've seen, yes, some pretty substantial growth in the number of people who are coming into the field. It's a mix of skills. Many of them they all have some sort of data background, but it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of in the ways that you might expect. So they're not, for instance, all IO psychologists, PhD types, but they are data scientists. Many of them, bringing machine learning and other types of capabilities into the space. Many of them will have just a strong kind of statistics background, but lack the HR expertise. And then there are some who are coming in from something like compensation, which is a very heavy data focus, but also an understanding of the people. So really a range of backgrounds, but certainly a real strong anchor in data analysis and insight. I think there's more clarity on how to do it, but it varies based on the maturity of the organization, meaning that some of them are still just trying to kind of get their feet wet to get some strong numbers so that they can look at things like attrition numbers or a predictive turnover model or something like that. And then there's some who are doing some really truly sophisticated things that are with a sophisticated people analytics team. I think there's a greater clarity in terms of how you might approach if you're kind of on the less mature side versus the more mature side. And some of the myths that we had at the beginning have been erased in many ways. So there used to be this perception that you had to have all your data right and you had to be able to do reporting before you could do predictive analysis. We actually know that's not true. You can do those things. Yes, you have to get your data mostly right, but you can do a lot of that stuff at the same time. So there is more of a settling in. Where I think there are some potential difficulties is that there are really two audiences for people analytics. There are people analytics practitioners who are very sophisticated in their capabilities, and then there are HR business partners and leaders who just tend to not have the same level of sophistication. So some of the products that are out on the market, it's not clear who exactly they're designed for and how they expect them to be used. So while there's some understanding of kind of the processes that we should be doing, I think there's still some mix-up and need for further clarification on the products that they're using to support them in doing it. There are a lot of different types who claim the people analytics moniker. So that can range from an organization that is doing kind of analysis on a single or a single primary data source. And so that might be something like your HRIS provider who has an analytics package that's associated with their technology, all the way to a type of provider that's doing complex iterative analysis from multiple different sources. And so that, but they all fit in the people analytics bucket. And so the way we're thinking about it is in terms of kind of who owns the data. Is it a data owner or a data consumer? And what's the type of analysis? Is it occasional analysis or is it complex and iterative analysis? Because that can lead to different types of, certainly use of the technologies, but also different insights. So that's what we're thinking about those on really a 2x2 and then categorizing vendors according to that. We didn't, mostly because everybody claims they have some AI And we think that right now it's a lot of noise. It's unclear who has real AI, if you will, versus who has just some kind of advanced models. That I think is kind of its own study that needs to be done, but we didn't do it in the context of this research. I mean, I think it needs to be a model that's truly learning. You know, I mean, there are, I think, 10 different accepted models of AI, and there's 2 that tend to apply most specifically to HR. So, you know, some AI that kind of fits within those 2 models is you know, a starting point, but then moving on to just simple things like how is it actually learning, what are the data sets that it's trained on, kind of having that level of understanding of what is underneath and within really the AI, I think is important. So it's complicated, and I would say for practitioners, if a vendor can't explain to you exactly what they do, and too many of them kick you over to the real data science people and you never get the answer, that's probably a sign to you that it's not really AI. We're in the report when we finally, because we have it kind of, we're still working on it. And actually, this event was good because we were able to get some feedback based on it. But in terms of some success stories, I'd be thinking about, there's a lot that have to do with just, you know, addressing attrition and that type of thing. But where we tend to see much better improvements is less about kind of turnover, because that's a little bit of an older area to focus on, but much more instead where we're thinking about how do we increase workforce productivity. So we see, for instance, we have an example of an organization that used organizational network analysis in conjunction with a leadership development program to understand how people were engaging with each other, and then using the leadership development program to help those leaders change their behaviors, monitor them through the organizational network analysis over time, and then at the end of it be able to say, actually, because these leaders have changed their behaviors, they, 1, have stronger relationships, but their teams, 2, have been much more productive. And then we would expect that to replicate. So that's kind of a different way of thinking about, we always think about turnover and some of that stuff, but there's actually a whole amount of additional ways, a whole number of additional ways we can use the analytics to power productivity and, you know, culture change and other things in organizations. We see really kind of 2 different models. So one is where it is a sort of center of excellence within HR, reporting into HR, you know, sometimes into HR operations and sometimes directly into the CHRO. And then the other model that we're seeing, we're starting to see it. I wouldn't say it's widely popular yet, but that is putting all of the business analytics into a single function and having people analytics as one component of that. The thing that's nice about that approach is then the analytics team can learn from others in the organization about different types of projects or approaches that they've used in the past, and they can kind of get more sophisticated more quickly. The downside, obviously, is that they could potentially get more removed from what is most necessary according to HR or to the business. So you know, obviously benefits and drawbacks to both approaches, but those are the 2 models we tend to see.